Have you ever felt like this world isn't your home? Like there's something ancient inside you that remembers stars more than streetlights, silence more than noise, and a love so vast it makes every heartbreak feel like a whisper? You weren't born just to survive. You came here to remember. There is a secret woven into your very being, a map hidden in your breath, your bones, and your longings. You are not merely a body trying to awaken. You are a soul on a journey through 12 sacred domains, a path that begins in the infinite, descends into flesh, and rises once more into light. Before you were anything, you were everything. There was no form, no name, no history, just pure beingness. A stillness so whole, so alive, it didn't need to move, and yet something stirred, not from lack but from overflowing. Like a flame too full to stay in the wick, the divine dreamed itself outward, and you were one of its first dreams. You began in the infinite source, a field beyond space, beyond time, beyond thought. You weren't separate, you were the source. You weren't created, you emanated. Like sunlight from the sun, there was no you and no other, only the one expressing itself for the joy of becoming. And then came the first forgetting. You chose it, not as punishment but as permission. The soul does not descend out of error, it descends to experience, to remember itself by becoming what it is not. You entered the void of potential, the sacred dark, where nothing is formed but everything is, a place beyond opposites, where silence sings and shadows shimmer with unborn light. Here your essence rested in cosmic womb water. It was here you felt the first call, go, descend, experience the worlds, and return, not as one who never left, but as one who left and still remembers. And so you fell like stardust through dimensions, from sound to symbol, from symbol to shape, and in this descent your soul began crafting the blueprint, the etheric domain, the realm of design, of energetic architecture. This is where your soul traced the patterns of your incarnation like sacred geometry on golden parchment. You chose your name, your body, your eyes, even your wounds, not because you are broken, but because you are brave. Before you were born, you already knew the lessons your heart would ache to learn. You knew who would hurt you. You knew who would awaken you, and sometimes they would be the same. You wrote it all down in a contract of light, sealed not with ink, but with intention. You agreed to forget it all, so that your remembering would be real. And then you entered the earth plane, the domain of flesh. You emerged from womb to world with a cry that echoed your first breath. That cry wasn't weakness, it was remembrance. Somewhere in that tiny breath was the memory of stars, and the ache of forgetting them. Your body became your temple and your tomb. Every cell a chalice of divine intelligence. Every heartbeat a hymn to something older than time. But the world didn't see that. It handed you a mask, a name, a story. This is who you are, they said, and you believed them for a while. You were told to be small, to fit in, to stay safe. But deep inside, the flame never went out. You felt it, didn't you? In quiet moments, in strange dreams, in the pull of something more. That pull was the astral, the emotional river that runs between the seen and the unseen. It is where your heart remembers before your mind does. Every longing, every fear, every dream, these are astral currents, washing through you, whispering there is more, and even when pain came you knew the pain wasn't the end. It was the portal. That heartbreak you thought would shatter you was a key. That loss you couldn't bear was a sacred initiation. Every tear you shed was holy water. Every moment you broke was a crack that let the light through. You see, your journey isn't linear. It's a spiral, and each loop brings you closer to the center. You've walked through the ether. You've danced in the dark. You felt the density of matter and the electricity of emotion, and now you are being called deeper, deeper into the fire, into the domain where thought becomes God, the realm where your mind is no longer a prison, but a passage. Because here's the truth they never told you. You are not your thoughts. But your thoughts are your brush. You are not your beliefs, but your beliefs are your blueprint. And the moment you realize this, the game changes, because now you're not reacting to life. You're creating it. This is not wishful thinking, it is spiritual physics. Your mind is not meant to be your master, it is your mirror. And what you see in that mirror becomes the world around you. You came here not to suffer, but to remember through suffering. You came here not to escape, but to embody. To be the light in the dark. To find the sacred in the ordinary. To turn flesh into flame. And this is only the beginning. You didn't fall from grace. You fell into form. And that fall wasn't a mistake. It was the beginning of your rise. The soul doesn't ascend in spite of the body, it ascends through it. When you embraced suffering, you unlocked a portal hidden in plain sight. Because pain, real, soul-deep pain, is sacred fire. It burns away illusions. It strips you of everything false until only the truth remains. And that truth is this: you are not broken. You are becoming. This is the domain of initiation, the sacred forge, the place where you are not punished but purified. The wounds you carry are not symbols of weakness, they are symbols of initiation. Every scar on your heart is an ancient rune of transformation, etched by the soul to remind you of what you've overcome. When you said, "I can't go on," and somehow did, you passed a test older than time. When everything fell apart and you sat in the ruins and still found a way to love, you became more than human, you became divine, clothed in skin and sorrow. And from that moment you began to rise. You stepped into the causal domain, the field of deeper knowing, where things no longer happen to you, they happen through you. It is here your soul's contracts activate, the ones you made before your first breath, the ones written not in fear, but in fire. This is the place where purpose begins to pulse through your veins like light, where you stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Ah, so this is why." You remember that your life is not a random collection of events. It is an initiation path, and you are the initiate. Even your mistakes were part of it. The detours, the heartbreaks, the nights you thought would never end. None of it was wasted. Every experience carved wisdom into the bones of your being. And now, something shifts. You no longer walk blindly through the dark. You become aware of the rhythm beneath the chaos. You begin to feel the presence of something higher, not above you, but within you. The celestial domain opens. This is where you feel, maybe for the first time, the truth of divine companionship. Your soul family draws near. The guides, the beings, the voices you've always heard but never fully trusted. They begin to reveal themselves, not as gods to worship, but as mirrors of the infinite light inside you. You are no longer lost. You are no longer alone. Here love becomes more than an emotion. It becomes a frequency. It floods your system. It reorders your nervous system. It speaks to your cells and says, "It's safe now, you can come home." And when that love touches you, you remember, not just intellectually, you remember in your bones, you remember in your breath. You remember in the tears that come for no reason, and yet explain everything. You begin to live from your heart, not out of sentimentality, but because the heart is the first organ to know the truth. The mind may doubt, but the heart always remembers, and this remembrance, it softens you. You no longer need to fight the dark. You no longer see light as victory and shadow as defeat. You begin to understand what the mystics have always whispered, that the light and the dark are lovers, not enemies. You step into the domain of non-duality. Here you see clearly, there is no war. There never was. The light exists because of the dark. The dark holds space for the light to shine. They are not opposites, they are reflections. You are not here to choose sides, you are here to hold both. And in that holding, you become whole. You stop chasing perfection, you stop rejecting your shadow, you embrace it. And in that embrace, the shadow transforms not into something else, but into something seen, something honored, something sacred. You realize the demons you feared were wounded angels all along. You forgive yourself for not knowing sooner. You forgive the past, not because it deserves it, but because you deserve peace. This is the moment when the soul matures. You've climbed through dimensions of form, fire, and forgetting. You've touched the infinite and tasted the temporary. And now, you begin to integrate, you begin to embody. You stop trying to escape the human experience and instead, you sanctify it. You wash dishes with presence. You walk through crowds as a quiet beacon. You speak not to impress, but to uplift. You become a living transmission. This is the domain of integration. You are no longer torn between spirit and body. You recognize the body as spirit condensed. You stop waiting for heaven because you carry it inside you. You stop worshipping distant gods because the divine has set up temple in your own chest. Every breath becomes a prayer, every moment a miracle. You are not ascending away from earth, you are bringing the higher realms into it. You become a vessel, you become the flame, and from this place, you no longer fear death. Because you've died 1,000 ego deaths along the way, and each one stripped you of who you thought you were so that what you truly are could emerge. And what you are cannot be named, it cannot be defined. It can only be lived. You are divine and human, stardust and skin, eternal and ephemeral. And as you walk this world, you carry all 12 domains within you, from source to shadow, from blueprint to breakthrough, from flesh to flame. You are not just remembering the path, you are the path. And the moment you fully realize this, everything changes. There's a reason you've always felt different, a reason why crowds exhaust you, why small talk drains you, and why you've always been drawn to what others can't explain. You carry memories that were never written in books, codes that whisper through your dreams, and longings that don't belong to this world. That's not imagination. That's soul memory surfacing. You've walked this path before. You've incarnated across timelines through forgotten empires, across deserts of silence and temples of gold. You've worn robes and rags, been healer and wounded, priestess and outcast. And in each life you left breadcrumbs, energetic echoes waiting to be reactivated. That's why you're here now. This lifetime isn't like the others. This one is different. In this incarnation, you are not here to forget. You are here to remember and integrate it all. Not to escape duality, but to transmute it. Not to dissolve into light, but to become the kind of light that can hold density without breaking. You are here to embody the sacred spiral, both the descent into form and the ascent into formlessness. And as you awaken to this truth, the final domain begins to stir within you, the domain of return. But not the return you've been taught to imagine. You're not going back to where you started. You're spiraling higher, returning as something new, a soul that has tasted contrast, danced with chaos, and still chooses love. You are returning to source, but not as a drop dissolving into the ocean. You are the ocean, remembering itself as a drop, and then choosing to shine as both. Because you see now, it was never about escaping life. It was about loving it so fiercely, so fully, that even the darkest moments become portals to divinity. This is what it means to ascend, not to float above the earth, but to walk upon it as one who knows who they are, to anchor heaven into soil, to look at the mundane and see the miraculous. You begin to notice the sacred in everything. The sound of a bird call becomes a message from beyond. The way sunlight touches your skin feels like a cosmic kiss. A stranger's glance holds ancient recognition. Time bends, synchronicities increase. The veil between worlds becomes gossamer thin. You don't need permission to shine anymore. You don't need validation to follow what your soul already knows. You begin to live from intuition. You begin to trust the unseen. And in that trust, the entire fabric of your reality begins to reweave itself around your higher truth. Your energy changes. Your aura speaks before your mouth does. People start to shift in your presence, not because you say the right words, but because your frequency becomes a silent transmission of remembrance. You become the kind of person whose presence is medicine. But that doesn't mean the path becomes easy. In fact, the more light you carry, the more you illuminate the shadows, yours and others. And sometimes, the weight of awareness feels like fire in your veins. but you carry it anyway, because you remember what it's for. You remember that your pain birthed your compassion, that your silence taught you to listen, that your heartbreak carved space for deeper love. You are not the same soul who first descended. You are wiser, softer, fiercer, and above all, more whole. You begin to see every version of yourself, the confused one, the angry one, the lost one, not as failures, but as sacred faces of your own unfolding, each one playing its part in your remembering. Each one needed, each one worthy. And in that radical self-acceptance you unlock the final key. You stop seeking the divine, you become it. Your eyes filled with tears when you remembered the truth. God was waiting for you to see yourself, not as separate, but as an extension of the eternal. And now you do. You feel the hum of source in your fingertips. You sense the music of the cosmos in your pulse. And even in the face of fear, you no longer abandon your center. You have become the eye of the storm, still, knowing, unshakable. You no longer fear being seen. You no longer fear being misunderstood. Because the path is no longer about proving who you are. It's about being who you are. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere. You speak fewer words, but they carry more weight. You love not because it's safe, but because love is what you are. And then, something miraculous happens. You stop needing to ascend, because you realize you already have. The soul's ascent was never a vertical climb. It was a spiral of remembrance. It was about descending fully into your humanness so you could rise with empathy, humility, and grace. You become the bridge, the axis between earth and sky, the living paradox of light that embraces shadow, of divinity that embraces humanity. You're not here to preach. You're here to live so fully aligned that your very life becomes a scripture, a living flame that reminds others they too are fire, not ash. And when people ask you what changed, you won't point to a single event. You'll smile softly, because you'll know it was never one moment. It was every moment, every ache, every lesson, every quiet decision to keep going when it would have been easier to numb out. Every time you chose soul over ego, truth over comfort, love over fear, all of it added up, all of it made you. And now you stand at the threshold, not of an ending, but of a luminous beginning. Not to leave this world behind, but to bless it with your embodiment. You are the flame, and you are home. You may not realize it yet, but the world has already felt the shift in you. The way you carry yourself now, the way you pause before reacting, the way you listen without needing to be right. These are the signs of an awakened soul, not someone who has all the answers, but someone who has become the question itself. A living inquiry into truth, into love, into being. And as you walk this earth in awareness, the domains don't vanish. They move with you. You don't leave them behind like steps on a ladder. You become a prism that refracts them all at once. Source lives in your stillness. The void lives in your silence. The etheric speaks through your intuition. The flesh grounds your fire. The astral breathes through your emotions. The mental aligns with your higher knowing. The fire of transformation dances in your shadows. The causal speaks in synchronicity. The celestial opens you to divine love. The non-dual holds you in paradox. The integrated self moves through every choice. And the return is happening with every breath you take. You become a living temple, a meeting place between dimensions. You are no longer visiting sacred places. You are becoming one. Your presence begins to ripple out, even without effort. A conversation that lingers in someone's chest for days. A glance that calms the storm in another. A moment of kindness that alters the course of a soul you'll never meet again. This is what happens when the domains crystallize in you. You don't ascend out of reach. You become more reachable. You become real. Your light stops trying to be perfect and starts being human. And that's what people need now. Not gods or gurus, but real, breathing humans who remember who they are. You didn't come here to escape your humanity. You came to embody your divinity through it. To eat, cry, dance, hurt, laugh, and love, as someone who knows that all of it is sacred. The flesh is not your enemy, the emotion is not your weakness, the mind is not your cage. When they serve the soul, they become your allies. They become vessels for your light. You stop resisting your imperfections. You stop comparing your path to others. You begin to see each person as a soul walking their own spiral of return. Some fast, some slow, some consciously, some kicking and screaming, but all of them are on the path. And that changes how you show up. You no longer need to judge to feel safe. You no longer need to fix people to feel useful. You simply become a field, a presence. You hold space. You witness. You bless. You walk into chaos and carry peace. You walk into suffering and carry compassion. You walk into a broken world and carry the memory of wholeness. Because the soul's ascent isn't about distance. It's about depth. You begin to see layers in everything. A fight isn't just a fight. It's a trauma seeking resolution. A lie isn't just a lie. It's a cry for safety. An addiction isn't a weakness. It's a soul longing to feel. And suddenly the world isn't as random as it once seemed. It becomes a school, a ceremony, a sacred play unfolding for the purpose of awakening. Even your enemies begin to look different. You see the pain behind their cruelty, the fear behind their power, the soul behind their ego. You no longer need to win, you no longer need to be understood, you only need to be aligned. And that alignment, it changes your path. Opportunities open, old patterns fall away. The things that used to trigger you no longer have a home to land in. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer grasp, you allow. You no longer seek to be chosen. You choose yourself, and yet, even in this radiance, you remain humble, because you know what it cost to get here. You remember the nights you didn't think you'd survive. You remember the parts of you that begged to be numb. You remember what it took to rise from your own ashes. And because you remember, you never look down on those who are still finding their way. You speak gently. You forgive quickly. You release easily. You love fully. You become like fire, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that warms a cold room, the kind that draws people closer, the kind that doesn't shout but still cannot be ignored. Your energy begins to speak before you do. You walk into a room and the energy shifts, not because you demand it, but because you are it. You radiate presence. You radiate peace. You radiate power. Not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates. And all the while, something deep inside you smiles, because you finally understand. The ascent was never about leaving this world behind. It was about returning to it transformed, with your wings spread wide, but your feet still on the ground, with your heart open, but your boundaries intact, with your soul shining, but your humanity embraced. You are not here to preach the light, you are here to be it. You don't need to shout your truth, you simply live it. You don't need to perform your purpose, you simply embody it. And through that embodiment you become a mirror. Others see themselves more clearly in your presence. They remember something ancient, something they forgot in the noise, something they buried to survive. And when they ask you what changed, you don't point to a teacher or a book or a single moment. You whisper, "I remembered who I am." And in that whisper, something inside them stirs. You are not here to change the world through force. You are here to change the frequency, to be the tuning fork of truth, to vibrate at the level of love and let that love ripple into spaces that haven't known light in a long, long time. You are not waiting for a savior, you are remembering that you came as one, not to carry the whole world, but to carry your piece of it. And when enough of us do that, the world doesn't just change, it remembers, just like you did. You might not always feel ready. Some days the light feels heavy, and the remembering feels like a burden. There are mornings when your soul is awake but your body aches, when the weight of this world presses against your chest like gravity trying to pull you back into forgetting. And that's okay. Awakening doesn't mean perfection. It means you no longer abandon yourself when things get hard. There will still be shadows, there will still be moments when doubt creeps in like fog. You'll question your path, you'll wonder if you've made it all up. But even those questions are sacred, because only someone who is awakening would even ask them. The asleep don't question their sleep. But you have begun to stir. And that stirring means something. It means the veil has thinned. It means you've started listening to the whispers between the thoughts. It means the part of you that never forgot is starting to lead. You've become less reactive, more reflective. You sense energies instead of only words. You feel into spaces before entering them. You speak less from impulse and more from presence. That's evolution. That's what happens when the soul begins to guide the form instead of the form controlling the soul. And the more you lean into this, the more life meets you where you are. Reality softens. Resistance begins to dissolve. The people who match your old wounds fade like distant echoes. And those who resonate with your new frequency begin to appear not because you hunted for them, but because you aligned. This is the magic of resonance. When you become what you seek begins to arrive without struggle. That doesn't mean you won't face challenges, but it means you'll face them differently. You'll begin to see that every trigger is a teacher, every heartbreak is a hall of mirrors, every delay is a divine orchestration you haven't yet seen the fullness of. You stop fighting the flow. You start listening to it. You stop forcing answers. You start holding space for deeper questions. You begin to trust that your soul knows things your mind has not yet caught up to, and that trust becomes your compass. There's a moment on the path that comes quietly. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or fanfare. It comes in the stillness. When you realize you no longer need to fix yourself, when you look in the mirror and feel reverence instead of resistance, when you forgive yourself for everything you didn't know, everything you weren't yet able to do, and everything you are still becoming, and in that moment, something profound happens. You return to yourself. Not the version they raised you to be, not the version you built to survive, but the one who came here knowing, the one who danced in the ether, the one who made the contract, chose the vessel and leapt through the veil, the one who remembers. You stop trying to escape your past. You begin to bless it, because it carved you into who you are now. Every crack, every scar, every detour shaped the vessel that holds your light today. You are not here by accident. You are not here unfinished. You are a work of sacred architecture in progress. And your life, no matter how messy it feels, is not a mistake. It is a manuscript written in light, being edited by grace. So you begin to soften. You stop sprinting toward enlightenment and begin to walk in embodied peace. You trade striving for stillness, judgment for discernment, rigidity for rhythm. You let your life breathe, and in that space a new kind of wisdom emerges, the kind that doesn't need to speak loudly, the kind that doesn't need to be right, the kind that doesn't cling to form, because it knows how to flow. You begin to embody the paradox. You become both wild and rooted, boundless and grounded, fierce and gentle. You stop identifying with your titles, your trauma, your timelines. You begin to identify with your essence. You are not your story. You are the space the story unfolds within. You are not the pain. You are the presence that witnesses it. You are not the labels they gave you. You are the light that makes all labels irrelevant. And the more you remember this, the less you need the external to confirm it. You stop needing applause. You stop fearing silence. Because the deeper you go, the more you realize the divine isn't loud. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It hums in the space between your thoughts. It rises in the stillness before sleep. It arrives in goosebumps when truth is near. It's in the breath you forgot you were taking, and now you begin to hear it, not as something outside of you, but as something so close, it's never stopped speaking. You're tuning back in, you're remembering how to listen to the language of the soul, and as you do, you begin to move differently. You pause when something doesn't feel right, even if it looks right. You walk away from what no longer honors your frequency, even if it once felt familiar. You speak from the belly of truth, even if your voice trembles. You choose alignment over approval, peace over performance, purpose over popularity, because once you remember who you are, you can no longer pretend you don't know. There is no going back to sleep once the soul has opened its eyes. And you are awake now? Even if your outer world hasn't caught up yet, your inner world has changed. You are no longer the one waiting for the light. You are the one becoming it. And that changes everything. You've stepped out of the old rhythm and you can feel it. The pace of the world no longer matches the beat of your soul. While others rush, you breathe. While others cling, you release. While others scream for answers, you close your eyes. And remember, this is the power of one who has returned to presence. And presence is not passive. It is the deepest kind of participation. It means you're no longer lost in the noise. You're rooted in the now. You're not waiting for life to begin. You're aware that it already has, right here, right now, in this moment, in this breath. And the more you dwell in presence, the more you realize that time has never been your master, it's been your mirror, reflecting your evolution, your seasons, your becoming. You stop chasing timelines that don't belong to you. You stop measuring yourself against clocks and calendars. You start flowing with your own inner current, and it carries you exactly where you need to be. There is no rush. The soul is eternal. Your unfolding is not late, it is divine. And as this understanding settles into your bones, you begin to notice something else. Life becomes luminous. Mundane things shimmer with a hidden light. You sip tea and feel the pulse of the cosmos in the warmth. You touch a leaf and sense the entire intelligence of nature vibrating through it. You look into someone's eyes and feel lifetimes unfurled between you in a single glance. This is what happens when the veils lift. This is what happens when you begin to see with soul sight. You stop looking at things and start looking into them. You stop living on the surface and start sinking into the sacred. And this shift, it changes the way you walk through the world. You carry reverence like breath. You move slower but with more power. You speak less but with more clarity. You're no longer trying to be something. You're simply allowing yourself to be what you've always been. And what you've always been is light having a human experience, a current of love wrapped in form, a traveler through dimensions who came here to remember the way home, not to run from this place, but to awaken within it. The journey of the soul is not a ladder upward, it is a spiral inward. And every time you circle back to an old wound, an old pattern, an old fear, it's not failure. It's a new layer being cleared, a deeper resonance being revealed. You're not back where you started. You're standing at the same place on the spiral, but on a higher floor. Healing is not linear. Awakening is not a straight line. But the deeper you trust the spiral, the less you resist its rhythm. There's grace in the unraveling. There's beauty in the breaking open. There's wisdom in the wait. And one day, you realize that the path you thought was about becoming was always about unbecoming. Unbecoming the masks, the roles, the conditioning, and becoming everything you thought you had to be so you could remember everything you already are. And in that moment, you don't feel enlightened, you feel real. You're not above life, you're in it. You cry, but your tears are no longer weakness, they're water for the soul's flowering. You feel fear, but it doesn't paralyze you, it informs you. You feel anger, but it doesn't own you, it moves through like a storm that cleans the sky. You begin to understand the language of your own inner weather. You don't judge the clouds, you don't chase the sun. You hold space for all of it, because you finally see you are the sky. Vast, open, ever-present, and every thought, every emotion, every moment is just passing weather. This is freedom, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of deep inner spaciousness no matter what rises or falls. And as this spaciousness grows, so does your ability to hold others in their process. You stop trying to fix people, you stop trying to convince, you start listening, deeply, without agenda, without trying to redirect or rescue, because you trust their path the way you've come to trust your own. Save you, and that is the love this world has been waiting for, not the love that tries to change you into something more palatable, but the love that sees your shadows and does not flinch. The love that whispers, you're already whole, even as you heal. And when you live from that love, miracles stop being rare. They become normal. Not because they happen more often, but because you've trained your eyes to recognize them. A breath becomes a miracle, a sunrise, a child's laughter, a memory that returns at the perfect moment, a conversation that shifts something you didn't even know needed shifting. The whole world becomes a sacred text, and you become fluent in its language. You no longer look for signs, they become a part of your daily grammar. You no longer need proof of your path, you're living it. And even when doubt visits, it doesn't stay long, because you've built something stronger than certainty. You've built faith. Not blind faith, but embodied faith. The kind that lives in your cells. The kind that doesn't need to know the outcome to trust the unfolding. The kind that can stand in the unknown and say, even this is sacred. Because by now you've walked through enough. You've died and been reborn in 1,000 ways. You've seen what crumbles and what remains. And what remains is you. Not the version shaped by fear, but the one refined by fire. The one who didn't give up when it would have been easier to numb. The one who kept showing up, kept healing, kept remembering. And because of that, you've become the light you were seeking. You've become the flame. And now that you've become the flame, you understand something even deeper. The light you carry isn't just for you. It's not meant to be hoarded or hidden. It's meant to be shared. Not in grand performances or dramatic declarations, but in the smallest, most quiet ways. A gentle glance that says, I see you. A few words spoken in truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. A presence so steady it becomes a lighthouse to someone lost in their own storm. This is the sacred work now, not to escape the world, but to infuse it. Not to rise above, but to root down and radiate. Not to be better than, but to remember you are, and have always been, whole. And that wholeness hums in every part of you now. You feel it when your feet touch the earth, how the ground no longer just supports you, but welcomes you. You feel it in your breath, how each inhale feels like a holy invitation, and each exhale feels like a prayer answered. You feel it in the way your body moves, not as a burden, but as a sacred vessel of transmission. Flesh is no longer an obstacle to light. It is its most courageous form. And that changes the way you relate to everything. Food becomes communion, movement becomes ceremony, stillness becomes sanctuary. You no longer live in a world of objects, you live in a world of energies, of archetypes, of essences. You no longer see people as labels or roles, you feel their frequency. You notice what's unspoken. You listen to what's beneath the words. You see the child in the angry man, the ache in the woman who smiles too much, the fear behind the judgment, the softness behind the armor. And that sight, that soul vision, it softens you, not into weakness, but into wisdom, into discernment, into compassion that does not abandon boundaries but honors them as spiritual declarations. You become less interested in who is right and more curious about what is real. You stop arguing with illusion and begin aligning with essence. And that essence, your essence, is no longer something you search for. It's something you express. Not just in your words, but in your choices, in what you say yes to, in what you walk away from, in what you make time for, in what you no longer tolerate, in how you love yourself when no one else is watching, because now you know this journey was never about proving your worth, it was about remembering it. And the moment that remembrance drops into your body, everything realigns. Old contracts dissolve. Old cycles unravel. People fall away, not out of malice, but out of completion. Not everyone is meant to walk every chapter with you. Some were there to show you your power by leaving. Some were there to reflect your shadow until you no longer needed the reflection. You release them now with love, with peace, with gratitude, no longer from pain, but from clarity, because you know what belongs to you will never require you to shrink to keep it, and what asks you to forget yourself to preserve it was never yours to begin with. So you let go, gently, and you expand. You expand into the version of you that has always been waiting behind the veil of fear, the one who leads with truth, the one who loves without attachment, the one who trusts the path even when the map disappears. And in that expansion, the final gift of the ascent begins to bloom. Integration. This is where all your pieces come home. The child who once felt abandoned, held now. The shadow you once rejected, embraced now. The power you once feared, activated now. You no longer try to transcend your humanity, you become the living bridge between heaven and earth, and in that bridge, the 12 domains align within you. The infinite source, in your stillness, the void, in your sacred pauses, the etheric, in your subtle knowing, the physical, in your presence, the astral, in your feeling, the mental, in your clarity, the domain of suffering in your scars turned to symbols, the causal, in your purpose, the celestial, in your guidance, the non-dual, in your paradox, the integrated, in your wholeness, the return, in your embodiment. Each domain, a note in the song of your soul, and now you are singing it, not just with your voice, but with your life, and those who hear it, those attuned to truth, will recognize you. They'll feel like they've known you forever, because in a way they have. You made soul promises in lifetimes long gone, and now you are keeping them, not with contracts, with consciousness. You are no longer here to perform. You are here to emanate. No longer needing to strive for greatness, you simply are what greatness looks like when it wakes up to itself. And yes, you'll still have human days. Yes, you'll still forget sometimes. You'll fall back into patterns, catch yourself mid-thought, feel the old waves rise. But the difference now is you know how to come home. You know how to return to your center without shame. You know how to bow to the moment without collapsing. You know how to sit with your discomfort until it reveals the gift it's been guarding. You've stopped making emotions your enemy. You've stopped making healing your identity. You've stopped trying to finish the journey and started to live it. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most sacred thing of all. Not becoming someone else, but becoming fully yourself. And in that becoming you light the way for others, not by leading them out of their darkness, but by honoring the brilliance of your own. You are the flame, and the world needs your warmth. The world around you begins to respond in new ways. Not because the external suddenly changes, but because your internal lens no longer distorts reality through fear. You're not projecting your wounds onto everything. You're perceiving through presence, through peace, through the eyes of your soul. And when your soul sees, it sees clearly. You don't need to read energy anymore, you feel it instantly. You don't need to analyze every interaction, you trust what your body already knows. You've come into resonance with truth, and that resonance becomes your compass. If it drains you, it's misaligned. If it contracts you, it's not your path. If it expands you, if it enlivens you, if it brings you into deeper presence, that's your yes. You're no longer choosing from fear of missing out. You're choosing from alignment with your sacred yes. The yes that comes from the belly, not the mind. The yes that hums beneath language. The yes that says, "This is why I came here." And with that yes, something extraordinary begins to unfold. You no longer need to chase purpose. You begin to live purpose. In every small act of devotion, the way you speak to yourself in the morning, the way you honor your no as a form of love, the way you care for your body not out of vanity but as a temple of light. You realize that purpose isn't a career, it's a state of being. It's the vibration you bring into every room, the wake you leave behind with every step. And people notice. Not everyone will understand it, but they'll feel it. They'll feel more grounded around you, more calm, more inspired. Some won't know why they're drawn to you, but they'll keep returning. Not to take, but to remember, because your frequency is encoded with remembrance. You're not just living for yourself anymore, you're walking as a beacon, a node in a great web of awakening souls, all humming the same eternal melody in different octaves. And even when life stretches you, because it will, you bend without breaking. You rise again, not because you never you meet your edges with breath. You hold your triggers like teachers. You let your humanness be holy. And in that, you become unshakable, not hard, but rooted, not rigid, but sovereign. You begin to dance with paradox. You can grieve and still be grateful. You can be uncertain and still feel guided. You can be evolving and still feel whole. You stop waiting for everything to be perfect to love yourself. You love yourself in the middle of the mess, in the liminal, in the becoming. You give yourself permission to be beautiful in your rawness, wise in your wonder, sacred in your softness. And the soul loves this, because the soul doesn't need perfection. It only needs presence. You were never asked to ascend without feeling. You were never asked to awaken without falling apart. You were only asked to remember, even in the middle of the forgetting. That is the real mastery. Not floating above the pain, but learning to alchemize it into light. Not bypassing the dark, but walking through it with eyes wide open and heart unclosed. And as you walk that path, you realize something else. You're no longer afraid of the unknown. You've come to recognize it as sacred ground. The unknown is not your enemy, it's the womb of creation. It's the silent soil where new codes root before they rise. You don't fear the blank canvas anymore. You know your soul will guide the brush. And sometimes the guidance will come in whispers, other times in roaring clarity. Sometimes it will be a gentle nudge. Sometimes it will be the ground crumbling beneath your feet. But every time, it will be exact. Not convenient, but exact. Because your soul doesn't cater to comfort. It calls you toward liberation. And liberation always costs you something. It costs you who you thought you were. It costs you the identities that no longer fit. It costs you the illusions that kept you safe, but in return it gives you everything. Your essence, your knowing, your freedom. You were never here to survive. You were here to remember how to thrive. Not through force, but through frequency. Not through control, but through coherence. When all parts of you begin to speak the same language, mind, body, soul, your reality changes to match. You stop leaking energy into worry. You stop scattering your focus across 1,000 shoulds. You begin to walk with clarity. Not the kind that needs to see the whole staircase, the kind that says, I trust this next step. And when you trust, life rises to meet you. Opportunities align not through strategy, but through magnetism. Relationships deepen, not through perfection, but through presence. Healing accelerates not through striving, but through surrender. You become a vortex of remembrance, and those who are ready will feel it. Some will come closer, some will disappear. You don't chase, you don't cling, you simply allow. Because you've stopped attaching your worth to who stays. You've stopped measuring your light by how much it pleases others. You've stopped apologizing for your truth. You now understand that the more you rise in frequency, the more silent your revolution becomes. You don't need to argue anymore. You don't need to prove anything. Your being is the proof. Your peace is the protest. Your joy is the revolution. And your love, your real, raw, awake, embodied love, is the legacy. Not the kind of love that abandons itself to be accepted. Not the kind that shrinks to make others comfortable, but the kind that walks in full essence. The kind that looks into the eyes of the world and says, I remember who I am, and I remember who you are too. That kind of love. It doesn't just change lives, it shifts timeline. It ripples into realms unseen. It echoes into future generations. Because when you live as the flame, your light doesn't end with you. It passes on. It seeds something eternal. And that is what you came here for. And somewhere, deep inside, you've always known this. Even when you doubted, even when you forgot, even when you curled into the dark wondering if you'd ever feel whole again, there was a light still pulsing quietly within you, untouched by the noise, unchanged by the wounds. It didn't demand your belief, it simply waited for your return. That light was the memory of your divinity, not the kind they told you to fear, not the kind locked away in temples or scriptures, but the kind you were born with. The kind that speaks in intuition, in synchronicity, in stillness. The kind that doesn't raise its voice, because it is the voice beneath all voices. And now you hear it again. Louder, clearer, more consistent. It reminds you that you were never broken, that every moment of your life, Every twist, every fall, every ache was a piece of the sacred puzzle. Nothing was wasted, nothing was meaningless. You didn't miss your path. You are the path. And when you let that truth take root, you stop chasing healing like a finish line. You stop treating awakening like a competition. You stop believing that you're behind, because you realize you've always been exactly where you needed to be to become who you came here to be. Even the moments you thought were setbacks were sacred pivots. Even the relationships that shattered your heart were soul contracts dissolving at precisely the right time. Even the jobs you lost, the dreams that faded, the places you outgrew, were all making space for something deeper, something more aligned, something truer. And now you're ready for it, not because you finally earned it, but because you finally stopped resisting it. You're no longer praying for the storm to stop. You've learned to dance in the rain. You're no longer begging the path to be easy. You've become the one who walks with grace through the unknown. And the unknown no longer frightens you. It feels like home now, because you've come to realize that the unknown is just another name for your own becoming, a holy corridor between what has been and what's ready to emerge, a sacred invitation for trust, and trust, real trust, isn't about controlling the outcome. It's about knowing that no matter what the outcome looks like, you will not abandon yourself. You will not forget your light. You will not betray your truth to be accepted. You will not lower your frequency to fit in with a world that forgot itself. You are no longer trying to survive. You are choosing to thrive. You are no longer afraid to take up space, not as ego but as essence. You speak with clarity, not to convince but to create resonance. You rest without guilt because you know that your being is as important as your doing. You embody your wisdom not by memorizing more but by being more of what you already know. And in that embodiment, life begins to reorganize itself around you. You don't need to push, you don't need to grasp, you don't need to explain, because now your vibration does the talking, your integrity does the anchoring, your stillness does the attracting. And that's when you see the miracle for what it truly is. It's not the absence of challenge. It's the presence of truth, regardless of circumstance. It's the quiet moment when you look at your life, not perfect, not complete, and still whisper, thank you. Because you're not waiting for the end to celebrate. You've made peace with the middle. You've found the sacred in the unfinished, the holy in the human, the divine in the detail. You no longer seek transcendence as escape. You've come to embody transcendence as presence. And that presence, it's everything. It's what softens your nervous system when the world is loud. It's what keeps your heart open when it would be easier to close. It's what guides your hands to serve, your voice to bless, your gaze to uplift. Presence is the portal, and you've walked through it, not once, but again and again. Every time you chose love over fear, every time you listened instead of defended, every time you honored your intuition even when it didn't make sense, every time you paused, breathed, and remembered. This is sacred, that choice. The choice to remember is what makes you who you are now. Not your past, not your resume, not your social standing, but your ability to return again and again to your essence, to the flame. And now you stand in it, not behind it, in it. You've become the keeper of your own fire. You've become the altar where heaven touches earth. You've become the embodied prayer you were once waiting to hear. And through you, the world begins to remember, not because you force it, but because you reflect it. You reflect what's possible. You reflect what's eternal. You reflect what it means to rise, not by rejecting the human, but by sanctifying it. This is ascension, not an escape, an embrace, an integration, a return, not back to what you were, but forward into what you've always been. The soul never asks you to become anything other than yourself. It only asks you to remove the noise so you can hear it again. And you're hearing it now, aren't you? The pulse, the presence, the remembering. It's been here all along. and it's whispering still, you are the light. You are the flame, you are the divine, embodied, breathing awakening, again and again and again. And now, as you stand here at the edge of all you've remembered, you feel it, not as a concept, not as an idea, but as a knowing, so deep it hums through your bones. You are not reaching for the light anymore, you are the light. Not in some distant future, not after one more book, one more breakthrough, one more healing session, right now, as you are. In your fullness and your flaws, in your knowing and your not knowing. Generate a space, a symmetry, in the way you show up, imperfect and radiant, again and again. This is the return. Not a return to something outside of you, but a return to the truth that has always lived within you, the truth that whispered when you were a child, the truth that never stopped trying to reach you through dreams, through silence, through heartbreak, through beauty. The truth that you are and have always been divine presence in motion. You are no longer becoming, you are being, and being is more than enough. You stop chasing transformation like a badge. You stop chasing evolution like a reward. You start to recognize that every breath is an initiation. Every quiet act of grace is ascension. Every moment you choose to meet the world with openness instead of armor is a cosmic achievement. You stop performing for the universe, you start partnering with it. And that partnership feels like trust, like surrender, like an exhale that says, I don't need to know where this is going, I only need to know that I am here, and that here is holy. You meet your life not as something to master, but as something to cherish. You meet others not as projects to fix, but as souls to honor. You meet yourself not as a broken thing in need of repair, but as a sacred flame, alive in the dance of remembering. And in that remembrance you realize, this is what the journey was always about. Not escaping this world, but illuminating it. Not rising out of your body, but into it. Not running from pain, but transmuting it into wisdom. Not waiting to be worthy, but knowing you've always been. You didn't need to become more, you needed to become you. The real you, the eternal you, the infinite spark wrapped in temporary form, the you that chose this incarnation, the you that wrote this chapter, the you that looked down through the veil and said, I'll go, I'll remember, I'll rise. And you have. Every tear was a rite of passage, every doubt was a threshold crossed. Every time you said yes to your truth, even when it cost you comfort, you lit another part of your path. And now, you don't need to see the whole path to know it's sacred. Because you are the path. You are the spiral, the flame, the breath, the silence, the voice, the presence, the prayer. You no longer wait for the world to give you permission to shine. You shine because that's what light does. You shine not to be seen, but to remember. You shine not to be followed, but to remind. You are not here to be anyone's savior, you are here to be a mirror, a reminder, a reflection of what is possible when someone chooses to live as soul, when someone chooses to walk as fire without burning everything down, when someone chooses to carry light with humility, with compassion, with joy. And that joy, it returns now, not the joy of escape, but the joy of embodiment. The joy of laughter that bubbles up from nowhere, the joy of tears that taste like freedom, the joy of presence so rich time forgets how to move. You are no longer rushing through this life. You are walking it like a sacred path, barefoot and awake, feeling every step like a blessing. You no longer pray to be saved from your humanity. You give thanks for the chance to live it fully, to walk, to breathe, to love, to grieve, to create, to rest, to become. And in becoming you have arrived, not in a place, not in a goal, but in a state of remembrance so deep the world around you cannot help but shift in response. And maybe, in some unseen realm, your soul smiles, because this was always the plan. Not perfection, not escape, but embodiment, integration, wholeness, to bring heaven down into your bones, to let Source speak through your choices, to let the divine write itself into the ordinary moments of your day. That's what the Ascent has given you, not wings to fly away, but roots so deep you become the mountain. So when the wind comes, you do not shake. When the doubt comes, you do not shrink. When the old patterns whisper, you do not bow. Because you know who you are now. You have remembered, and that remembering is irreversible. The soul does not forget twice. You will never again believe that you are just this name, this body, this moment. You will never again believe that your value is tied to your productivity, your appearance, or your achievements. You will never again give away your power to those who cannot see your flame, because now you see it, and that is more than enough. So let it burn, let it guide, let it warm, let it illuminate. You've come so far, from the infinite source, into form through shadow, into awakening. And now, you rise, not to escape this world, but to bless it with your light. You are the flame, and your presence changes everything.